Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you here in our webinar titled Adopting Agile Methodologies. My name is Mohammed Al-Ruwaili, and I'm a training and development volunteer at PMI KSA chapter. First of all, I would like to welcome our speaker today, Mr. Obi Omerige. For over a decade, Obi has played a leading role in delivering highly regulated projects, executing complex programs, leading multinational teams, and achieving enterprise strategic objectives. Obi is currently heading a project management competency development at the Middle East First Nuclear Power Plant, NUA, where he leads a team of project professionals in delivering a portfolio of project management development packages and ensuring a culture of effective project practice enterprise-wide. We also have in the background Ms. Hajar Al-Aisi, the Senior VP of Membership and Volunteer, and Mr. Ali bin Dawood, who is supporting us from an IT perspective. Mr. Abi, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, and good evening to everyone on the call. I can see we have the numbers increasing as we progress. It's a pleasure to be speaking to the community, the project management community all the way in Saudi Arabia. As Mohammed mentioned, my name is Obi Omerige. Now I've done a check with Mohammed and the team at PMI Saudi on my audio check. But from time to time, before I get into the presentation, I want to know that my attendees can hear me. So let's test your connectivity and your chat ability. If you're a participant, can you type in the chat box, great, that you can hear me? Javed, salam alaikum to you also. Is there anyone else on the call? Just let's do a quick hello, hi, and where are you dialing in from? Hello, Mohammed, Walid, Badr, excellent. All right, great. Now, if I have 45 minutes with you in the session, we have to ensure that we maximize this session, and that's my aim. We're talking about adopting agile methodologies. So here's a quick snapshot of what we'll be looking through together. We're going to talk about several methodologies, one goal that we have, the nature of organizations. If we're talking about project management concepts, we apply this concept within an organization, and we'll get to know more about that. And of course, look at a case study, steps to adoption, and then we're going to talk about some things that nobody wants to talk about. So that will be interesting. And of course, at the end of the session, we're going to take some Q&A session facilitated by PMI Saudi. Brief about me. I know Mohammed had mentioned my profile. This slide here shows you a progression on the kind of projects I've worked on. From software, I moved into manpower servicing, and then I moved into financial services, and then now I am in nuclear energy. And there's something that has been recurring in every industry I've worked on, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Adopting agile methodologies. Regardless of the certifications, the accolades over the years, across industries, you still hear the same thing. Now, my entire career has been in project management. And just for some humor, if you've spent a lot of time like me watching Netflix, you would have noticed this particular series that has caught the attention of the entire world. It's a South Korean series called The Squid Game. And I saw something very interesting that relates to project management. And as project managers, you could have encountered this, whereby you think the scope of your project is right here, what you see on the screen. It's certain, you can easily execute it, it's straightforward. But unfortunately, as things progress, you realize that, oh my goodness, there are several changes that occur on your projects. Uncertainties, different things that happen, and then your scope that you thought was certain has evolved over time. And that's the same thing when it comes to our organization. And then you hear the question about agility. I don't know how many of you have heard your manager tell you this before, that we need to be agile. And you hear this conversation across different aspects of your working environment. Sometimes you hear it if you're in the technical field, Badger, we need to be agile. Sometimes you hear it even in human relation activities. An employee comes late to the office, an employee is not implementing their job properly, and we say we need to be agile. And then the question comes up as regards, what does it mean to be agile? How can we adopt agile practices and methodologies? And that's what this webinar is all about. It's going to be as practical as possible so I can coach you on how we can adopt and harness these principles and these practices in our organization. Now, before I keep speaking, I want to understand the level of exposure that you have, so I don't go too technical or I don't go too basic. So a quick question will be, what is your level of exposure when it comes to agile practices? You can type in the chat box. Do you have a certification from PMI? Are you a Scrum, are you Scrum certified? Are you an agile coach? What exactly is your level of exposure when it comes to agile practices? If you don't mind doing a quick type in the chat box so I can see who we have on the room. Okay, so Mohammed doesn't have any, so that'll be great. We'll be exposing you to this as we progress. Who else in the room? Do we have, okay, we have PMP certified. We have an Agile certified practitioner. Okay, there we go. All right. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So I'm seeing from the 4 responses, we've come across Agile practices during PMP study. Okay. Okay. So I see we have some Agile certified practitioners. We have 2. We have more PMPs in the room. And then like Abdurrahim. And then overall, we have individuals that don't have exposure to this. So I'm going to break it down as much as possible. And then for those who have more knowledge around this, I will come up to your level as well. Okay, so Badr, no problem. We're going to work on this together as we progress. Now, the first thing to understand when it comes to agility or agile practices, before we go into how can you adopt this methodology, the first thing to understand is that the goal of agility, the goal of being agile, can be achieved through several methodologies. A lot of times when people say we need to be agile or let's be agile, they think that agile or agility itself is the practice, but it's not. It's a goal. So take, for example, on the screen we have here, these are different methodologies that exist in the world today that can enable you to be agile in your practices. Now, some of us have heard of the popular one. Okay, we have Scrum there on the screen that is very popular. If you've spent some more time in industry, you may have heard of Kanban. PMI has purchased, come into partnership, and they have Discipline Agile right now. But look at the screen here. Every single one of these methodologies, if implemented, will enable an organization to show a level of agility. So we have one goal and there are several methodologies. And this is creating a level of confusion in the market right there. What exactly do we have to do to be agile? We have some of the founding fathers when it comes to agile practices, trying to simplify the conversation. So here I watched recently a presentation from Alistair Cockburn, who was a contributor to the Agile Manifesto, trying to simplify what it means to be agile. If we want to get to the heart of being agile, what exactly does it mean? And here's a framework around collaboration, delivering, improving, and reflecting. There are other people, take for example, we have Mark Lyons and Scott Ambler, who are coming together to work and simplify the conversation. We have so many methodologies, but how do we simplify what it means to be agile? And then you've been seeing the conversation around discipline agile, whereby we have about 5 to 6 different core focuses around agile practices. You know, we have the continuous delivery model, we have programs, we have lean aspects, we have exploratory, because there's several methodologies, but the goal is one goal. How can we be agile? And I'll explain what it means to be agile later on. We also have the confusion in the PMO space. Program management offices or project management offices or centers of excellence are also asking questions about what does it mean to be agile. I saw this picture this morning and I just laughed a lot. You know, we see a lean agile PMO, but what exactly does it mean to be an agile PMO? And that's a conversation ongoing right now. Leaders in organizations and who are running PMOs are asking themselves, if I'm more service-oriented, does that make me more agile? What can I do and to what level of intensity do I govern? How involved should I be for me to be an agile PMO? So there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of questions around the concept of being agile. So before I define what it means to be agile, let me test your knowledge, because everybody has heard the word agile, 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 agile. We're going to play a game together, and that game is called Two Truths and One Lie. On the screen, you're going to have a representation of 3 statements. One of those statements is a lie about what it means to be agile. I want you to type the alphabet of the lie on the screen. So 3 statements here. The first statement is, through agility, you can get twice the work with half the time. Or, bravo, you get more value from less work. Or, Charlie, everyone is agile. One of these is a lie. I can see Sultan has given us his feedback. Let's have some more feedback from the room. Okay, Rateb, a PMI KSA is getting in. I like that. Mohammed, Ibrahim. What does it mean to be agile? Because everyone is talking about agility, but do we really understand what it means to be agile? Okay, Bada says, I think C is a lie. So we have a lot of people saying C, Charlie. We have also a lot of people saying alpha, Hazma, Batul. I'm going to wait for one more comment. If we have one more person, we have 38 people on the call. So let's have the conversation going. I know I'm not beside you, but let's try and see if we can have the conversation going. Great. And Hajar says Charlie. So let's dissect this before I show you the answer. I'm going to start from Charlie. Charlie is true. When it comes to agile, and we're talking about the ability to respond quickly, the ability to shift and adjust, everyone has that ability and everyone is agile. And the pandemic has showed that to us clearly in how organizations have shifted, changed their processes, adjusted. The core question is, how agile are you? Some organizations are more agile, more able to change and move quickly, but everyone has the ability to change, to adjust. Everyone is agile. Step 1. Let's look at Bravo. You get more value from less work. The primary concept about agile practices is that you focus your energy, your activities on the highest value tasks. So when you think about developing a product, for example, you don't think about building all the features. You think about building the most important features that the customer wants, like your minimum viable product, first of all, from less work. So it's not about how much work you do, it's about how much value you're able to generate. So Bravo is true. So for those who mentioned Alpha, Hazma, Abdulhamid, Mohammed, you are absolutely correct. Alpha is a lie. Through agile practices, there is no way we can validate that you get twice the work half the time. There is no mathematical formula. There is no basis for that statement. And a lot of times, thank you, Hajar, a lot of times when we talk about agile, sometimes people are thinking we can get more with less time. We get more value, but there is no mathematical calculation about getting double the work or triple the work with less or half the time. So that's the lie alpha. Great job right there. So let's see the definition of agility and why everyone is agile. It is the ability to move and change direction quickly and with ease. At the bottom of my slide, I put there the VUCA notion, which talks about the fact that around our organizations, in the world that we live in today, there is volatility. In fact, I think 2020 to 2021 is one of the best times to talk about agile practices, because there's uncertainty around us right now. There's complexity, there's ambiguity, and organizations need to be able to move and change directions quickly. And agility is having that ability to move with ease and change quickly. Now, why do companies need this? You know, when we talk about adopting agile methodologies, why would an organization need this? And we have great questions. We're going to tackle some questions at the end of the session. Let's understand the mind of an organization. Every organization here can be represented by the dot you see on the screen, singular dot that you have in there. And that dot is a decision. Companies need to think about several decisions on a day-to-day basis. Who do we hire? What market do we get into? Should we execute right now? Should we launch this product right now? Is this the right time? But companies don't just make one decision. Organizations make several decisions on a day-to-day basis. Production decisions, manufacturing decisions. And then it even gets more complex because those decisions are connected to every other decision. If an organization has a backlog of decisions and we have to get through one decision before we go to the next decision and the next decision, we become less flexible and we become more rigid in our ability to change. So when you think about Toyota and what they are doing in the production system, they are trying to see how exactly can we ensure that we do not have a backlog of several decisions. When you talk about lean manufacturing and just-in-time systems, how can we ensure that we have what we need when we need it and only then, so that we can move and adjust quickly? So organizations are like what I just showed you. They're a massive organization, but they have a lot of decisions to make. And then when it comes to being agile, you are thinking about how can I make those decisions and execute those decisions quickly without bothering about the backlog that I have with me. Unfortunately, companies are not very good at making decisions. They're not very good at adjusting to change. They're not very good at removing that whole backlog. And that's why the question or the whole conversation of agility comes into play. So when you look at your organization and you come to your management and say, we need to be agile, let's adopt an agile methodology, let's implement Scrum or Kanban, your management doesn't really care about methodology. They care about how can we fail fast and learn quickly? How can we adjust and how can we get value? How can we increase our predictability? Okay, so in organizations, your management is thinking about return. How exactly do I get return for my investment? How exactly do we ensure we can achieve our vision? In the same organization, we have people like Hajer, for example, who are certified, who are practitioners. They have certifications. They know the value of these principles. But then in a rigid organization, if it cannot be implemented, you end up having frustrated people. And then, of course, in the same organization, you have middle management who sometimes resist the whole change when it comes to adopting agile methodologies. So I'm going to share with you some steps on how we can adopt these practices and what we can do to be more agile in an organization. Here's a quote from Leading Agile. And they talk about the fact that we have to change and readjust the organization so that the organization can be more agile. So let's see a few approaches. Step one is we're going to talk about a culture-driven approach to agile practices. And in the culture-driven approach, we're thinking about changing the minds of people. And a lot of times when companies want to adopt an agile methodology, they start from here, the culture. The goal here is that if we focus on the minds of people, if we focus on being agile, maybe we can do agile. Next, we have the practice approach, whereby we want to do agile to be agile. So we want to, for example, to start having some reports. We want to have some burn down curves. We want to have some daily stand-up meetings, so on and so forth. The practice approach focuses on things that you do, okay? What you do, the roles, the ceremonies, so on and so forth. And then we have the systems-driven approach, whereby you focus on ensuring that the foundation of the organization is aligned. Your legacy systems, and you ensure that the governance and how the organization works can enable agile practices to be performed. So I like to interact as much as possible. The cultural approach focuses on a new way of thinking. The practice approach focuses on the way that we work. Let's start doing things that we see, things that we hear about. And then the systems approach looks into the structural framework. Let me get back to the room and let me ask you, what do you think will be the first step to take when it comes to adopting an agile methodology in an organization? Where do you want to tackle it from? Will you start from culture, from practices, or from systems? What do you think? Okay, Sami gives me an alpha, Haja, Batu, Badr. Okay, great. Mohammed. Awesome, I'm seeing some great feedback here and I'm loving the feedback I'm seeing. Everyone is leaning into one direction, I like that. Ibrahim, giving me an example, your case study with Aramco, Saudi Aramco. Okay, great. So let's have a shocking moment. And this is why I love webinars. This is why I love interacting with the community. This is why I love these sessions, because the objective of this session is for us to transform how we think, learn something new, and hopefully take that new learning into the organization. So we have culture, systems, and practice driven. I'm going to dissect them one by one and show you why the systems driven approach is the first step that you have to tackle. Let's start from culture. Here's a McKinsey report that talks about the fact that over 70% in the survey that they conducted, okay, they talked about when it comes to an agile transformation, culture being a huge challenge. If we drill into this, when it comes to changing the culture of an organization, it's not as easy as you think it is. You are talking about changing the mindset. You're talking about ensuring that the organization is ready, psychological safety, so on and so forth. The culture of an organization is something that takes time to evolve. And as such, because it takes so much time to transform the mindset of people, the foundations of what people do in an organization, it's so difficult to have that as your starting point. If you change the culture, so you can't change the culture if the organization is still using legacy systems, if the organization is still having an old archaic way of working. The culture change comes as a result of several other changes. So that is a downstream result that you're going to have. And then next we have the practice approach. And I love this case study I'm going to share with you. During World War II, there's a fantastic theory around what we call cargo cults. And you can Google this and check it out. In an island called Melanesia, because the American soldiers were trying to avoid the enemy, they kept going from island to island. And in one of these islands, the people living there saw what the soldiers were bringing. They saw the helicopters, they saw the telecommunication devices, they saw the planes. So they started making the same ones with the intent of, if I make more of this, I can call more of these devices. So they made the planes out of straws. They made the goggles out of straws, but no plane landed. No communication was made. Nothing changed whatsoever. When you start implementing practices, because those practices are agile practices, you are doing the same thing here, like what these guys were doing in the island of Melanesia. The fact that you have daily stand-up meetings, or the fact that you have retrospectives, or you have burn-down curves or 2-week sprints, none of these practices mean that you are agile. And I'm going to explain that to you more in detail, what it really means to be agile. But across the industry, I see so many organizations, they say, yeah, we are agile. And I ask them, how do you know you're agile? They say, we have daily stand-up meetings. But what about the deliverables and the frequency of deliverables? What about the focus on value? What about the lack of dependencies? So the practice approach doesn't really mean that you are agile. Adopting agile practices and moving to an agile methodology is a systems problem. And I'm going to explain what I mean by systems problem in detail. There are several configurations in an organization that makes it impossible for us to be agile. The system-driven approach focuses on 3 main areas. And if you want to find out more about this concept, we have to look into leading agile. And I'll explain some more, Amma, in detail. You're going to get to that very soon. We're going to look at 3 top details. 1 is your backlogs. 2 is your teams. And then 3, I'm going to talk about metrics. Let's talk about product backlog. Let's talk about product backlog. When it comes to being agile, we're talking about being able to ensure that we have a clearly defined set of requirements. And I'm going to simplify the conversation as much as possible. A clearly defined set of features that are small enough that when I go into my sprints, when I start working on them, I can deliver them in the least possible time. A lot of organizations find this extremely difficult to build a product backlog. And that is a system issue. That is not a culture issue. That is not a practice issue. It's a system issue. It could be because of different dependencies in the organizations, different structures in the organization. It could be because of the fact that there's a lack of capability in the organization to actually do that. The ability to clearly articulate what work has to be done. Step 1. Within the system parameters also, we talk about teams. In an agile environment, everything is done by a cross-functional, self-governed team. And here is where we have one of the biggest system issues. Let me ask you a question. In your organization, do you have a team that can perform a job end to end without having to go and depend on another team? So they're going to start the work. Let's take, for example, a very, very simplified work, very simplified, producing a product, a procedure. Do you have a team of cross-functional people that will do the research, do the work, publish the work, and ensure that every single thing is done within that space? in some organizations, they have a lot of dependencies. So you have one team that does the job, but before the job goes live, they have to send it to marketing. And then marketing will hold the job for 1 more week, and then marketing will send it to compliance. And then compliance will hold it for 1 more week and say, hold on, let's check, let's do some checks. And then they will send it back to marketing. When you have that level of dependencies, back and forth, you reduce your ability to be agile. If, for example, you are implementing a Scrum methodology, whereby within 2 weeks you expect an output, that dependency on different teams makes it impossible for you to have an output within a 2-week period. So in organizations, you hear some project managers, you ask them, have we finished the job? Are we done yet? And you hear things like, yeah, we're going to finish this job once we get something done. Sometimes you hear about the death by delay. You're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. This is my best. Sometimes you hear about a job that is 99% complete. We're almost there, but we also have 99% to go, and correct. It could be because of technical issues, structural issues. So having that team, cross-functional, that has everything that we need to get the job done is a core foundation of being agile. Has nothing to do with your culture, has nothing to do with your practice. That is a system approach. So regardless of how you train people, regardless of the culture that you have, if you have the structural, technical, legacy obstacles in your organization that prevent you from being agile, there is no way you can be agile. You have to start from the systems. Ensure that your organization can do agile, first of all. Let's get into some more. I'm cautious of time. So when I think about the team, I'm thinking about, do I have my resources? Do I have the right organization structure? Do I ensure that I tackle work in my pipeline, that there's no excessive work in my pipeline? Do I have a cohesive team to get the job done? We have to tackle the systems. And then finally, the third aspect of the system is ensuring that we can clearly define acceptance criteria and that we can clearly have outputs that are usable, desirable, and functional. And there's so much I can say about the consumable solutions. But I'll just say one thing. When it comes to being agile and adopting an agile methodology, the outputs that you're always producing is always a finished output. So you have to clearly define the criteria for that output. So in short, we need to ensure that we have the right governance when it comes to the systems approach. We have to have the right structure. All our obstacles have to be tackled. And then we need to have the right metrics and tools to ensure that we are clear about our outputs. Key concepts in adopting an agile methodology, preparing for and adopting. So again, adopting agile is about ensuring that you build the backlogs, you form the teams, and you are consistently delivering solutions to the organization. Okay, I'm going to quickly talk about some case studies, and then I'm going to go into some things no one wants to talk about. And again, I'm cognizant of time because I want to hear your questions and I want to have a conversation with you also. There's a very popular case study and a YouTube talk about PayPal. It's an old one, but it's a very popular one, about how PayPal adopted agile methodologies and how they went about in changing the way that they worked. So I'm going to encourage you to look into that. But I'm going to share a couple of things that they did, in terms of adopting this practice. And they started from the systems approach. How do we ensure our organization can do Agile or do Scrum or do Kanban but how can we ensure that the methodology we are practicing will make us more agile? The results that they were focusing on is how can we ensure that we have aligned products? How can we ensure that we have delivery teams, roadmaps, sprints? How can we have customer-driven solutions? And let me show you 5 things that they did to ensure an adoption of these methodologies. And these are things that you can do as well. Now, remember, we have to start by focusing on the systems. But take, for example, Badger, being in a ministry, okay? Let's say in a ministry. If you want to start tackling those legacy systems, the old systems, technical challenges that prevent you from having cross-functional teams, structural issues, you cannot start by yourself as a project manager or a project sponsor. Your first step is to ensure that you have the right leadership support. Now, listen, throughout my career, okay, I've been in projects. Right now, I'm in a leading government organization. I will always encourage you, if you're going to do something significant, try and ensure that you have the right leadership backing to get that done. Build a coalition. It's not enough to be frustrated and say, oh, we can be better, oh, we can do better. No, find someone who buys into the advantage of doing that, and then plan over time to progressively elaborate on what is being done. By having a leadership coalition, you are going to hold people accountable. They're going to help you with obstacles that you may face, so on and so forth. The slides are here. You can go to them later on. Step 2 is to define the end state. A lot of organizations want to adopt agile methodologies because it sounds great. They want to say, yeah, we are agile. Yeah, we do agile. But the question is why? What is the end state? What is the goal? And how do you get there over time? Extremely important. Define the end state. And along that lines, you can build a roadmap. The roadmap shows you the journey towards getting to that end state. And then with leadership, you can track that over time and define, are we there yet? And what is left to be done? Step 3 is to continuously review this. I can show you tons of organizations that have a great plan, have a great roadmap, but they are not consistent in looking at what they are doing. Frequently checking against your progress, your outcomes, and are we there yet? You want to be able to trace your improvements along the way. I'm going to give an example. So a very important statement here. Now, PayPal adopted a big bang approach. When you hear about big bang, when it comes to solution delivery, you are talking about implementing one-off across an organization. If I'm changing my brand as an organization, I will most likely do big bang because I don't want my name in one part of the country to be different from my name in another part of the country. But sometimes when you're adopting a new methodology, a new practice, you may want to phase it out and not do a big bang approach. So think about what works best for you and then review frequently. Point number 4 is an extremely important point. And I always talk about this. If I'm doing something that is not connected to my strategic objective, it is a candidate for me to cancel it, okay? So ensure that your journey towards adopting an agile practice, a methodology, Scrum, Kanban, whatever it is tied to a strategic objective. How does this new approach provide business value for the organization? Extremely important, extremely important. And then again, number 5, we communicate, and ensure that we manage communications. Now, a couple of things, about 3 more slides, and then we can take questions when it comes to adopting agile methodologies. There are elephants in the room. It's not so easy. It's not so straightforward. And there are some very obvious elephants in the room that nobody wants to talk about. It's just right there. It's like the elephant you see right here, but no one wants to talk about them. Step one, and I'm going to talk about middle management later on. Let me talk about middle management now. If I'm adopting a methodology that is agile, let's say Scrum, for example, my focus is on having a cross-functional team, which means everybody in the team can do everybody's job. We have multiple skills. So the conversation around hierarchy, having a boss above me, is reduced. It's not gone, but it's reduced. And a lot of time, you have the most pushback from line managers because they feel that their jobs will be threatened if we adopt an agile practice. Maybe I might come back later on and share with you why middle management should have no issues. But there's a huge thought process and there's a huge misconception that if we go agile, if we adopt an agile methodology, managers will lose their jobs. It doesn't have to be so. It's a long conversation. Next, and I'm going to give a reference to this book, Crossing the Chasm. If you look at the product life cycle, there's going to be this gap between adopting a new product. And that area, could be an area of huge uncertainty, an area of pushback, and a lot of times in adopting a new practice, some people are quick to pick it up. Some people are laggards in that journey. And there's this chasm in between, that it could be a make or break in you adopting this new practice. How exactly do you cross that? How exactly do you successfully implement this new idea is something that has to be addressed. Finally, is the fact that not every organization should adopt an agile methodology. And I'm speaking slowly because that's extremely important. If you're in software, for example, 9.69, you want to be fast, you want to change quickly, you want to adjust the way you work, you want to respond to customer requests, you want to change for the customer. Excellent. If you are like me and you're in a highly regulated space like the nuclear industry, you want to ensure that you follow strict regulation and procedure. We don't want change. We don't want to adjust. We prioritize safety and predictability. So you have some organizations that are built for predictability, and you have some organizations that are built for change. When you go back to the value statements in the Agile Manifesto, a lot of people read these statements the wrong way. So I'm going to close by reading the statements again. When it comes to Agile practices, we value individuals and interactions over processes or tools. When you have something that is valued over something, it does not mean that you do not value what is on the right-hand side. So in Agile practices, they still value documentation, negotiation, following a plan, and processes. They just value the left-hand side more than the right-hand side. But everything that you have on the right-hand side still happens and is still valued when it comes to Agile practices. So when it comes to your organization, think about it and ask yourself, are we built for predictability or are we built for change? Before you even start the whole concept of what methodology do I adopt? So these are key foundational steps that I want to share with you in my 45 minutes when it comes to adopting an Agile methodology. And then for a quick recap, is to acknowledge the fact that your organization is Agile. You are Agile, okay? It's not until you achieve an ACP or you are a Scrum Master, you have the ability to adjust and change. Step two is the fact that your organization makes a lot of decisions. And what we want to do is we want to ensure that we do not have a whole backlog of decisions. We need to see how can we be flexible and make adjustments and not have to think about the backlog of decisions that we have to make. 3 is that we have 3 approaches to adopting an agile methodology. We have to start from the systems, not the culture. If you train everybody in the organization, that is good on you, but that does not tackle structural, technical issues that you have. Practices, if you have the stand-up meetings, review meetings, you have the burn-down curves, it does nothing to tackle the dependencies that you have. So in adopting an agile methodology, you start with ensuring that we have the appropriate foundation to do agile. And of course, we talk about ensuring that we can build backlogs, we have cross-functional teams that are not dependent, and that we can produce consumable solutions. And I've walked you through the 5 steps that you have to take. Ensure that you have the buy-in, have a vision in mind, build your roadmap, review consistently, and communicate frequently. Most importantly is to tackle the elephants that you have in the room. And one of those key elephants is the fact that it is very possible that your organization does not have to adopt or transform into an agile organization. Some organizations are built for predictability, and some organizations are built for change. Find out which is your organization and then work from there. And with that said, I would love to take questions that we have. I'm going to hand over back to Mohammed to facilitate the Q&A session.
Thank you, Abi, for this excellent lecture. And I would like also to thank the participants for being active. We are happy to take the questions, as Abi said. Please proceed to either put it in the chat or in the Q&A box.
Awesome. So while we're waiting for some questions, I see Badr's question: what's the difference between agility and predictability? So in project management, the core, okay, around projects sits within scope, okay? And I'm going to be very, very simple, very, very basic. Scope is, what do I want to do? I want to build a house, okay? So if I've built a house before, I am very clear about what I want to do. Predictability is I can predict the outcome. I am very clear about what the outcome will be. So if I can predict it, I'm sure about it. When it comes to agility, I am opening myself for, at some point, my customer tells me, oh, I want something else. Oh, I want you to change the design, change the flooring, change the roof. So when you come to an agile space, you are being open to change. That's the core difference between that. So I just had that question, so I thought I should just answer better on that. Back to you. I think I see Hajar's hand raised.
Yes, thank you very much, Obi. If you permit, Mohammed, I can ask Mr. Obi a question. It was a wonderful session. Thank you, Obi. And we learned a lot from this session. Even we are certified, but we are learning from you. So my question is, what is the relation between being agile and doing agile? Should we be agile to do agile, or when we are agile, we can be agile?
I love that question. I love that question. So step one, what do I mean by being agile? Okay, so the whole concept around people saying that we are agile or being agile is around our mindset, right? So when an organization implements, goes through this journey of implementing these practices, they have agile coaches. So everyone tells you, and that's the fact. Remember that agility is a mindset, but it's so difficult to understand. What do you mean by it's a mindset? You know, what do you mean by agile is a mindset? So we don't think about, oh, we're doing things. We are thinking about, let's go back to the values that we shared earlier on. We value responding to change. We are open to change. So in being agile, we are tackling our mindset around the journey to deliver solutions. That's the step one, okay? A lot of projects managers or governance entities are very rigid and want to focus on scope. I am delivering only what I want to deliver. In having that agile mindset, you're opening yourself up to say, you know what? In planning the work being done, I'm ensuring that I create avenues for collaboration. I ensure that I'm thinking about having high value products first of all. Being agile tackles your mindset. Doing agile focuses on what are the tools, techniques, practices that enable agility within a methodology. So for example, there are tons of practices, there are tons of tools that we're going to use in the execution of projects under an agile methodology. That's the doing of agile. Does that help?
Yes,
Hajar?
thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Salem had the same question, so that's nice.
There was one question, Obi, earlier, introduced earlier, which is asking about the difference between agility and predictability.
Yeah, so that's the question I answered first of all, in the fact that I was talking about certainty of scope. Predictability focuses on certainty of scope. I can predict what I want to do. I am clear about it, right? I'm building a house, I expect the house. Agility, in my earlier definition, is focusing on you opening up to change, and then you being able to adjust based on the change that happens around the way. So remember, it's the ability to move and change direction quickly. Predictability does not want to change. I don't want to move quickly. I want to do only what I set out to do. And that's the major difference between those two. Okay.
I also would like to tab, yeah.
Okay, please, Mohammed.
Yes, I would like to tab on one fact you mentioned, that agility is a goal, not a practice. Would you please shed more light on this? Because if we apply the agility well-known methods, okay, like Scrum, etc., are these considered goals or practices?
Okay. So Scrum is a methodology, first of all, okay? And a lot of organizations will go and study, not a lot, okay? Someone can say, a PMO manager, for example, can say, hey, I've gone for a Scrum Master training. And in your Scrum Master training, you are going to learn about sprints. You are going to learn about backlogs. You are going to learn about retrospectives. You're going to learn different practices that you're going to perform within a Scrum methodology. And the next thing that you see is that suddenly you're like, okay, guys, from now on, we are going to start doing this. And then what they realize is that, for me to have a product every 2 weeks, I need to ensure that this other department does their job within my time span. And that is where the issue comes about when it comes to dependencies. Because suddenly you realize that I cannot do the entire job that I plan to do according to Scrum methodology within my 2-week period, because I don't have all the resources I need. I don't have my team able to do that. So it's nice to know the practice, but if the systems, if the organization is not built for you to implement that practice, then the practice is a waste, because you cannot do that. So that's the whole idea behind that. You can't just go for a Scrum training and come to the organization and change things. you have to first of all ensure that can I deliver work within 2 weeks, end to end, something like that. Does that help? Awesome.
Yeah,
Hajj?
very clear. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Another question, if you permit, Obi. Do we have really the choice to be agile or predictive? As you said, this depends on organization and industry. But actually, sometimes we found ourselves in the obligation to practice agile. We don't have requirement clear. We don't have resource available. Sometimes the environmental factor let us choose agile, choose to delivery incrementally to make steps in our projects.
Okay, so great question. Now, we always confuse a couple of things. Great question. Couple of things. If I'm a project manager within an extremely predictive waterfall project, I can define and say my output of my projects will be delivered incrementally. So the fact that I have incremental outputs from my projects doesn't mean I am agile. That's step one. Remember, every organization is agile. The core question is, what methodology are you implementing? If I am in a tight situation and then I fast track work being done, I have a lot of overlaps, I'm able to ensure I get job done within a short period of time, it doesn't mean that I am implementing an agile methodology. So a lot of times within organizations, we deliver outputs incrementally, we get the work done faster, and suddenly we start saying, we are agile. Yes, you're agile, but you are not implementing a specific framework, a specific methodology. So we always confuse those two. So Haja, to your question, yes, every organization is agile, but not every organization implements a specific methodology. If I ask you, how was work done? What was your practice? Was it Kanban? What exactly was it? You're going to tell me we were agile because there wasn't really a body governing what was done. You were just able to ensure that the inherent characteristics of the organization being agile, you were able to deliver work incrementally. So there's a difference, and that's why I started from there. When it comes to agility, the question is, what methodology are you implementing? Because every organization is agile. Okay?
Yes. Maybe we did hybrid, not really agile.
yeah, that's
not
a different
really
topic.
predictive. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you, Abi. I think we have reached the end of the session. I would like to thank everybody for their participation. Thank you, Abi, for this amazing lecture. If anybody has any questions or inquiries, please feel free to contact us at PMI KSA chapter. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next session. Abi, if you have a closing note, you may proceed.
No, thank you so much to the chapter, to Mohammed, to Hajar for having me. And if you need to reach out to me in person, you have questions, aside contacting Mohammed and Hajar to reach me, you can do that on admin@projectcoachonline.com. And then looking forward to being part of the chapter in another event. So thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all attendees.